15 years ago, Ray Moynihan was developing his initial feature series for the Financial Review, looking at pharmaceutical company transparency. And he asked me at the time whether I thought any of the kerfuffle being generated by he and other journalists like Melissa Sweet, who was at the Sydney Morning Herald at the time, was likely to actually change anything in the way drug companies went about their medical marketing in the future. I said I had absolutely no idea. And no one could have told then the incredible changes that were going to happen over the next 15 years. And to understand the full scale of that, you need to appreciate a bit about what was happening in the early 1990s. Drug company sponsorship of medical marketing and consultancy fees to specialists was growing at an exponential rate and operating largely in an unregulated environment. In fact, it's only recently that regulations have changed in Australia, requiring pharmaceutical companies to disclose how much they spend on sponsoring educational events. But where and how did all this start? One development which gave the issue broader traction was the launch in 1998 of Ray Moynihan's book, Too Much Medicine, with its parallel themes of disease-mongering and bought influence, beautifully played out in a well-executed PR campaign for the launch of the book. And then not long after was the Channel 9 Sunday expose, where, unfortunately for the industry, they managed to get a hidden camera into a medical specialist meeting in Sydney. And it showed dancing girls and apparently inebriated delegates leaving the meeting. That was a trigger for a whole range of media stories and follow-ups, all making quite direct reference to the excesses inherent in these kinds of sponsorships. So those two events were really catalysts for much broader media discussion of the issue of transparency in the Australian media. That is quite a contrast to where we are now. Pharmaceutical companies are amongst the most vocal advocates for increased transparency. Some are arguing that payments to healthcare professionals should be disclosed on an individual basis, while others are saying that companies should get completely out of medical education. So the position of companies now is to be advocates for increased transparency as a way of improving the industry's reputation. Senior executives now blog about this issue, and you can hear feature stories on radio programs which canvass the views of a wide range of stakeholders, and often it's the spokespeople for the pharmaceutical companies that are the strongest advocates for transparency.
The Australian Medical Association President Steve Hambleton says the group supports moves towards greater transparency.
So Medicines Australia is taking a look at this again, and various pharmaceutical companies have different views. It's likely, though, that that bar will be lowered, that more will be disclosed, not less.
But it's the big pharma companies themselves that are leading the reforms. After doing its own market research, GlaxoSmithKline found that 2/3 of Australians saw payments to doctors as unacceptable. They were the first drug firm in Australia to publish their records.
So what implications does this focus on transparency have for those of us that work in healthcare PR and medical marketing? First of all, we need to appreciate that transparency is the new guiding principle in the way this kind of work gets done. Second of all, we need to adjust our own policies and procedures, be they at an agency or company level, to make sure that we're taking account of this changing environment. Third, it's incumbent upon us all to be briefing the spokespeople and the opinion leaders with whom we work so that they understand the implications of these changes for them. Fourth, we all need to read and follow and keep up with changes. Many of the developments we've discussed in this blog have really only changed in the last few weeks. And of course, all of that is just a prelude to what can be contained in the Medicines Australia Code when the new version comes out later in 2012. And fifth, the issue of transparency is really all about corporate social responsibility. So if you hold principles of transparency and openness close and they are part of your corporate ethos, then clearly there are opportunities there to be involved in market leadership activities. So the answer to Mr. Moynihan's original question from back in 1997 about whether all that kerfuffle might change anything significant about the way pharmaceutical companies do their medical marketing now seems pretty clear. It actually looks and feels like an entirely different game. And the key question is how well set up you are to play that game, and what opportunities the new environment might present you in positioning your organisation as ahead of the pack in dealing with issues related to transparency and disclosure. And if you need to find out some more information, go and check out palin.com.au.